Is now the right time to be buying an investment property? It might be a question you're asking yourself, and you might be spinning your wheels, reluctant to make a decision, or maybe you don't know what the answer is to that question. Well, hopefully in today's episode, I can help give you the information and the questions you need to be asking yourself and observing in the property market to answer that question. Welcome to the Rentvesting, Property and Getting Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Steve Williams. Great to have you here today. I'm the founder of W Property Advisory, and I've helped tons of people across the country get their foot into the property market with an investment property that's aligned with their goals. So I've worked with a lot of buyers, and I've seen the people who succeed, and I've also heard about the people who have been left behind. I've spoken to people who are like, yep, I'm going to buy a property, and then 1-2 years later, they're coming back to me and asking the same question, should I buy one now? And in the meantime, prices have gone up, and potentially they may not have enough deposit now because the price growth has actually outstripped their savings ability. So we're going to break it down from 3 different angles. Number one, we're going to look at what's going on in the market at a national level. Is it the right time to be buying property, or should I maybe hold off and wait for prices to drop? Sometimes you hear people say that, and I don't think that's a good idea, but we're going to help unpack where the market's at. Then I'm going to talk about the personal decisions that you need to ask yourself. And only you can answer these. You can't have someone else tell you what to do, but hopefully this can help give you some clarity. And then finally, I'm going to talk to you, what do you actually need to have ready to make that leap into property? So today's going to be super value, and I hope you get some clarity on your situation. And I would greatly appreciate it if you can subscribe to the channel. We are on YouTube and also on Spotify. Look up Rentvesting on Spotify, and you can follow us along on the journey as we help break down property investing, make it nice and easy, and help people, particularly first-time property investors, start making the right decisions and getting ahead. So what's actually going on in the property market in 2025? Is it actually the right time to buy, or are prices going to drop, or are they going to flatline? What's actually going on? Well, there's some key factors that are going on which could cause property prices to surge. Number one, we've got interest rate cuts. We've had 2 already, drop down 0.5, and there's definitely some more on the way, is what we're hearing, with forecasts that could drop by maybe another 1%. And we're also seeing a lot of the banks are actually getting very competitive, and they're actually dropping their rates outside of the RBA decisions as well. So this is really good news, because it means that firstly, the cost to borrow money is going to be less, but it also means that borrowing capacities for people is actually going to increase. So that's definitely going to impact on the demand side. As I've talked about before, property is all a game of supply and demand. It's basic economics, right? So if you've got an excess in demand and low supply, prices are going to go up. I'm going to share with you some actual data to see what's going on in the statistics and the numbers. How is that contributing to whether this is the right market to buy right now? I think it's really important that we take a bit of a zoom out, right? Because we might be making a decision based on what's going on right now. But if you're buying property, it's typically a long-term investment. You're going to buy, you're going to hold it for maybe 10, 20, 30 years time. And that's when you're going to see the real results. This article just came out on ABC. You can see that the average home price in Australia has actually now surpassed $1 million. So this makes it pretty unaffordable for a lot of people in the country, especially if you're living in Melbourne and Sydney. Those inner city suburbs are quite costly. But if we look at the breakdown of the data, we can see what's house prices done in the last 10 years. You can see that New South Wales, a decade ago, 718,000, and now $1.24 million. We've got Victoria here, started out the decade at around 600,000, and by the end of the decade, and right now we're looking at almost $900,000. Let's take a look at Queensland. Started out the decade at 461,000 and ending the decade at 944,000. This article is on ABC if you want to Google it. We won't go through all the states today, but you can definitely see over the last 10 years, the average house price growth has grown quite significantly in most of our states. So let's look at the supply situation, guys. So this one here, Financial Review, you can see that in the next 5 years that the National Housing Supply and Affordability Council is saying that we're on track to have a shortage of 262,000 homes, which is just absolutely crazy, right? And we actually need way, way more than what we're actually building. If we break it down by what's going on in the States, we can see that our target to have in 5 years' time, in 2029, is we need to have 1.2 million homes built but we're actually on track to only have 938,000. So we're only going to have 78% of the housing that we need. But if you break it down by the states, you can see New South Wales absolutely atrocious. Only 65% of the housing requirements going to be completed. Victoria, a little bit healthier, 98%. Queensland, 79%. South Australia, 70%. And WA, 81%. So as you can see, where we're sitting, most states are around 20% short of we actually need to construct. Now let's look at the demand. And one of the big, I guess, factors for demand over the last couple of years has been international migration. Of course, we've got natural births and things like that, which increases the population. But by far the biggest surge in population and definitely demand has actually been population growth. And in this article, it talks about how over the last 2 years, we've had 1 million migrants move to the country, which of course has, I guess, created a bit of pressure on the housing market, whether it's a rental and also people that are looking to buy. And we have seen that this has actually now started to slow. You can see the data just here. We had a real peak in 2023, but now it is starting to drop down. So this is something we probably want to watch. This is the most recent data we have from the ABS. If we look at the next one that comes out, it's going to be interesting to see if that increases again, now that we've got the Labor government re-elected and everything's a bit more stable, or will actually keep declining. Because if it keeps declining, we're probably going to find that the demand for housing is also going to reduce a little bit. So that's something just to keep an eye out on. I've talked about the last 10 years, but let's really zoom out, right? So this is a chart of the median house prices over the last 30 years. You can see that, house prices in 1990s, early 1990s, they started at less than 200,000, and there is quite a differentiation between capital cities, but overall, we can see that the average price is now sitting just, under $1 million, right? So, and we've just seen the most recent data, we're actually now at that $1 million mark. So that's almost like 5 times, we started out around 200K, and now we're looking at about $1 million, which is absolutely crazy. And, a lot of these factors you can see that have occurred over this time. We've had financial crashes, we've had interest rate increases, interest rate decreases, we've had lots of instability in the economy. But overall, on a long term, house prices have increased. And there's that old saying, house prices always increase. I mean, in some countries, that's not the case. But in a place like Australia, we need to remember that this is one of the best countries in the world and people want to live here. And we've got population growth occurring and the economy is doing reasonably well at the moment. It is quite strong. So we're going to see likely that house prices will continue to grow, maybe not the same trajectory as the last couple of years, but on a long-term average, if you're getting anything more than sort of 4 or 5% growth on your property, then it's worthwhile doing it. But the average has been 6.8, over 7%. And of course, some cities have performed much better on a long-term average than that. So based on this top level information, to me, it really is a no-brainer, right? If you're looking to buy a property for the long term and hold on to it, well, it really makes sense based on the data we've seen historically. I've spoken about the macro level. We need to drill it down and now look at the state level because every state has markets within markets. If you ask my dad who's in Canberra, he would tell you, the market's really soft, which is actually true for the ACT, whereas other markets like WA, parts of Victoria, and also Queensland have actually been performing really, really well. So you need to make sure you buy the right asset in the right location to help, I guess, give you that success when it comes to property. Now we're going to move on and talk about, is it right for you? Is now the right time for you to buy an investment property? Now, maybe you've got a property already and it's the place that you're living in, or maybe you've got one investment and you're looking to expand your portfolio, or maybe you're completely new and this is your first investment property. The sorts of things you want to think about is, can I spare a little bit of money aside each week? Typically for most average buy and hold properties where we're getting average rental yields around 3.8 to 4.5 or even higher. You normally have to contribute about $300 to $400 per week, although this is starting to come down now that interest rates are dropping. And also if the rents are increasing, then that might look a little bit different. But really need to make sure, do I have the cash flow that I can contribute to the property each week to hold on to it? But also thinking about, am I actually mentally prepared for an investment property? Because even though some people call it passive, it does, I guess, take some upkeep and you will have some bills come up occasionally. And it is something you need to look after as well. You can, of course, put a good property manager in to take care of it, but there's going to be a lot of decisions you need to make. So if you've got a busy life, then just think about, do I have the time to look at this, research it, make the right decisions, and take care of my property? Because if you don't have the time, it may not be right for you. And if you don't have the time, then make sure you get professionals on your team, whether that's a good buyer's agent or a good property manager, and good people in your pocket that can make sure they're helping you make the right decisions for your situation. Now, I want to ask you, what's actually stopping you? So think about, okay, what is actually stopping me from buying a property right now? It could be a case that maybe you don't have the money to do it, which that's fair. So then look at how can I actually increase my income or start saving more money to save up that deposit to buy the property. Or maybe you've got some life situations coming up. I've spoken to clients who they're going to have a baby and they're just a little bit worried that if they put too much money into an investment property, they're not going to have the funds, which is totally relevant, right? You need to make sure you can actually live your life before you start investing as well. But for other people, they might have things like a baby coming up on the way, and your borrowing capacity can actually drop significantly when your life situation changes. So always chat to a good mortgage broker, because they're going to tell you what impacts on your borrowing capacity. And if you've got a life change coming up in the future, then you might want to make a decision to buy now so you can get in before your situation is impacted. And the other thing as well, a lot of people are quite scared. It is a big decision to take out a big loan and buy a huge asset. So think, okay, what's actually stopping me? Am I worried? Is something going to go wrong, or is it not going to turn out? I think what you need to think about is what could be the worst case scenario. And I can tell you, if you're buying in the right location, then typically you could probably sell it in 1 or 2 years' time and probably break even, if not actually make a little bit of money out of it. So think about, am I risk averse? Am I worried about what's going to unfold? Think about, what's the worst case scenario? If this property doesn't work out, what do you do? Well, you can sell it. Of course, there is some tax implications and some agency fees and transaction costs and things like that. But worst case, you can just offload the asset. That's really the worst case scenario, right? And then number 3, I'm going to talk about what is the actual elements that you need to have in place before you buy a property. Well, number 1, you need that financial readiness. You need to have a deposit saved. Typically, you're going to need around 90 to 130K to buy an entry-level investment property. That means you're going to have typically a 10 or 20% deposit. Obviously, the more deposit, the better. So you can avoid lender's mortgage insurance, but anywhere from 90 to 120K will help you get your foot into an affordable area. You also need to have the borrowing capacity as well. So your income needs to be able to sustain a mortgage. And of course, the rental income gets included in that as well. We also then need to make sure we have the mindset for it. If you're going through a lot of life stresses, or if you're, worried, then you need to check in on yourself and be like, am I willing to go through this stress? Otherwise, I'm going to outsource the stress to some other people who can help me make the right decision and help you get that reassurance that you're making the right decision for you. Then number 3, we need to look at our knowledge and mindset readiness. And good on you for listening to podcasts and watching YouTubes like this, because that's going to help you build up your knowledge to understand what you're getting yourself into. And there's a quote around, never get yourself into a business unless you fully understand it. And again, you can either do all that work yourself. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. So either keep doing the research and learning yourself, or shortcut the process and use a professional. We're coming to the end of the episode, guys. I wanted to keep this one relatively short and sweet. We've talked about the market conditions. As I said, we've got the macro level, everything that's going on at the top, at the Australian level, but then you need to drill down to the state level and then down to the suburb level to work out whether now is the right time. But what I like to say in a nutshell is it's always the right time to buy a property. The question is just where, and that where needs to be aligned to your why to make sure that it's goal aligned and it's going to help you achieve the objectives that you set out to achieve. I've talked about some of the questions you need to ask yourself, and often it might even come down to a gut feeling, whether it feels right for you, because that's really important, is understanding whether you're willing to put yourself through the process. So number 2, we've talked about your personal situation. How do you feel about it? Are you willing to go through the process? And these are questions you can only ask yourself, right? You need to think, am I ready for it? Am I willing to take the leap? But I can tell you, those who take action are the ones that are going to get ahead. So at some point, you need to call yourself out and be like, look, Steve, stop procrastinating. Let's take some action. Let's just do something. Because often taking action over perfection is going to get you far, far ahead. And then finally, I talked about the the different elements you need. So of course you need financial readiness, you need your mindset, and you also need the knowledge, or again, shortcut the process and use a professional. If you're still not sure, then pop your worries, your questions, your concerns into the comments. I can feature it in further episodes that I put together, but I also do reply to everyone that's listening. So I'd love to help you out on your journey if I can. And if you are wanting to understand your current situation and some of the things you might want to work on, we've got a free property investor quiz. It's going to talk to you about whether you're ready to invest in property. You can click the link below and it's going to ask you 20 yes/no questions. And at the end of it, it's going to give you a score. Really, in my opinion, you pretty much just need your deposit saved in the borrowing capacity and everything else can take care of itself. But this score is going to, I guess, work out whether you're ready to do it yourself and go out there and buy the right property. And it's going to talk to you about things like strategy, whether you have a strategy in place, also what's your mindset at, and also whether you've got that financial readiness as well. So click the link below, do that quiz, and yeah, see what your score is. Again, please subscribe to the channel. Click subscribe now. We got some really cool guests coming up on the show as well. I love to bring experts in to actually unpack their wisdom because people learn from experience. I've been investing in property for over 15 years, coming up 16. And and it's always good to learn the mistakes that other people have made along the way. So hopefully you can avoid making those mistakes and get yourself set up so you can start getting ahead. Well, great to have you here today. See you at the next one. And until next time, let's rentvest and get ahead together. All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs, and speak to a professional.